The champagne glass caught the candlelight as my mother raised it above the table, with the theatrical timing of a woman who had been rehearsing this moment all afternoon. "To my daughter," she announced, her voice carrying cleanly across the private dining room of Aurelius. Nashville's most celebrated restaurant, 3 Michelin stars, 18-month waiting list, the kind of place where the menu arrived without prices because the prices were not the point. Who has spent the last 10 years proving, very thoroughly, that potential means absolutely nothing without direction. Laughter rippled around the table, not the sharp, uncomfortable kind. The warm, familiar kind, the laughter of people who have heard this joke before, in various forms, at various family gatherings, and have long since decided that laughing is easier than objecting. 26 members of the Caldwell family raised their glasses. My younger sister, Brenny, raised hers highest. My father looked at the bread basket. "My name is Nadia Caldwell. I am 34 years old. I have not touched my champagne." And this is the story of the night my mother turned my failures into a toast, and a chef walked out of his kitchen and turned everything else. Some context, because context is everything. My mother, Diane Caldwell, was a woman of genuine accomplishment and absolute certainty about what accomplishment looked like. She had built a successful accounting firm over 20 years, raised 2 daughters in a beautiful home in Brentwood, and maintained, with impressive consistency, the conviction that love and criticism were not merely compatible, but essentially the same thing. She had been disappointed in me for approximately a decade. The disappointment had begun when I left a stable position at a corporate marketing firm at 24 to pursue what she called, with a precision that still impressed me, a collection of enthusiasms masquerading as a career plan. What I was actually pursuing was a culinary business degree combined with hands-on kitchen training, a combination that made sense to exactly 2 people at the time, me and a chef named Gerald Okonkwo, who had taken me on as a working student in his restaurant kitchen, and told me after watching me work for 3 months that I had an uncommon understanding of how food and business intersected. Gerald was 61 years old, classically trained, and the kind of person who changed the direction of your life by saying one precise true thing at exactly the right moment. He had said, "Most people who understand food don't understand money. Most people who understand money don't understand food. You understand both. That is rarer than you know. Don't waste it." I had not wasted it, but the building of something real takes time that looks, from the outside, like nothing. And my mother had been watching the outside for 10 years with the patient, loving, devastating certainty of a woman waiting to be proven right. The restaurant had been my mother's choice. Aurelius occupied a converted Victorian building in East Nashville, high ceilings, original millwork, a kitchen that was considered by serious food people to be one of the finest in the American South. The executive chef and co-owner, Marcus Webb, had been on the cover of 3 national food publications in the past 2 years. The reservation list was, as I mentioned, 18 months long. My mother had gotten a table because her largest corporate client had a standing reservation and had offered it as a gesture of appreciation. She had chosen it because it was the most impressive restaurant she knew of. She had not done any further research. This was, it would turn out, a meaningful oversight. I had become involved with Aurelius 14 months earlier, not as a diner, as an investor and strategic partner. Marcus Webb, brilliant in a kitchen, less comfortable with the financial architecture that kept brilliant kitchens operational, had been introduced to me through Gerald, who remained a mentor and occasional collaborator, now in his retirement. Marcus had a restaurant that was critically celebrated and operationally fragile. I had a firm, Caldwell Culinary Ventures, which I had built over 7 years into a boutique hospitality investment group that specialized in exactly this kind of situation. We had spent 4 months in careful conversation before I invested. Not just capital, but structural support, the financial systems, the operational frameworks, the strategic planning that allowed a restaurant of Aurelius's caliber to function sustainably rather than brilliantly and briefly. Marcus had told me once, over coffee in his empty dining room before the lunch service began, that before our partnership, he had felt like a man trying to build a cathedral while simultaneously keeping the lights on. Now, he had said, I just build the cathedral. I was the person keeping the lights on. I was also, as of 14 months ago, a 23% equity partner in one of Nashville's most acclaimed restaurants. My mother did not know this. She had chosen Aurelius for my family dinner because it was impressive. She had not considered the possibility that impressive things sometimes belong, in part, to her daughter. The toast landed the way my mother's best performances always landed, with precision and warmth and the particular cruelty of humor that loves its target. 10 years, she continued, warming to the material. 10 years of pivots, 10 years of concepts and ventures and what she calls strategic investments. She used her fingers for the quotation marks, which was a detail I noted. Meanwhile, her sister built a real business, bought a real house, and gave me 2 real grandchildren. She beamed at Brenny, who accepted this with the practiced modesty of a woman who had been the favorite her entire life and had learned to wear it lightly. So, to Nadia, who reminds us all that it is never too late to find your direction. She looked at me with an expression that managed to be simultaneously affectionate and annihilating. Whenever that happens, sweetheart, we'll be here. 26 glasses touched across the table. I looked at my champagne. I looked at my mother. I picked up my glass and drank, not in the toasted-to sense, but in the sense of a woman who needed something cold and sharp in her throat before she decided what to do next. The dining room resumed its rhythm. Conversation restarted. My aunt asked Brenny about her children. My uncle asked my father about his golf game. The machinery of a family dinner, briefly stalled by performance, resumed its comfortable noise. I sat quietly. I was debating, genuinely, whether to say anything. Whether this was the moment, or whether the moment was something I should continue to defer. The way I had deferred it at Christmas, at Thanksgiving, at my father's retirement party, where my mother had introduced me to his colleagues as our other daughter. She's still figuring things out. I was, in fact, figured out. I had been figured out for some time. I simply had not decided that announcing it was worth the energy. I was reconsidering that decision when the kitchen door opened. Marcus Webb did not typically come out of his kitchen during service. This was a known thing among his staff. A firm, clearly communicated preference rooted in his belief that the kitchen was where his attention belonged during active service hours, and that the dining room had its own team whose job was to manage the dining room. He came out that night. He was still wearing his chef's whites, slightly marked from service, which told me the kitchen was busy, which meant leaving it had been a deliberate choice. He was 42 years old, tall, with the particular physical economy of someone who has spent 2 decades in professional kitchens. No unnecessary movement, no wasted gesture. He crossed the dining room with the focused directness of a man who knew exactly where he was going. He stopped at our table. He looked at me. Nadia. He said my name with the warmth of a colleague and the respect of a man addressing a partner whose judgment he had come to trust. I saw the reservation come through last week and wanted to make sure I caught you before the end of service. He glanced at the table, registering. I could see the size of the party, the occasion, the particular social texture of what he had walked into. Is everything to your satisfaction this evening? I looked up at him. Everything has been beautiful, Marcus, I said. Please tell the kitchen. I will. He paused then, and this was the moment. The thing I had not orchestrated and could not have predicted, and which arrived with the casual, devastating precision of something that simply needed to happen. He turned slightly to address the nearest people at the table, which happened to be my mother and my aunt. I hope you're all enjoying the restaurant, he said pleasantly. It means a great deal to have Nadia here. She's been instrumental in everything we've been able to build this past year. The operational work she's done behind the scenes is something most people never see, but the rest of us feel every single day. He looked back at me with a directness that was entirely genuine. We're lucky to have you involved, I mean that. He excused himself. He returned to his kitchen. The door swung closed behind him. The table was completely silent. My mother's champagne glass was still raised slightly, suspended in the position it had been in before Marcus arrived, as if her arm had simply forgotten to lower it. My aunt was looking between me and the kitchen door with an expression of visible recalculation. My father, for the first time all evening, was looking directly at me. My sister Brenny set down her fork. It was my mother who spoke first. Her voice was different from any register I had heard from her in 34 years. Not the warm authority, not the precise disappointment, not the affectionate annihilation. Something stripped back, something almost young. "He called you," she stopped. "What does he mean, operational work? What does that mean, Nadia?" I set down my champagne glass. "It means I'm a partner in this restaurant, Mom," I said. "It means the financial systems that keep this kitchen running the way it runs, the ones that let Marcus focus on the food instead of the payroll, those are mine. It means Caldwell Culinary Ventures has been doing exactly what I told you it was doing for the past 7 years." I paused. "You just never asked what that looked like from the inside." The silence extended. "You own part of Aurelius," my aunt said carefully, as though testing whether the sentence would hold its own weight. 23%, I said. "This Aurelius," my mother said. "This restaurant that I chose. The one with the 18-month waiting list," I confirmed. "Yes." What happened next was not triumphant in the way I might have imagined it at 24, when I was leaving the corporate firm and my mother was listing the reasons it was a mistake. It was quieter than that, more complicated. My mother did not apologize immediately. She was not built for immediate apologies. The mechanism took longer in her, required more processing time, more private reckoning before the words could find their way out. What she did was go very still. And in that stillness I could see, for perhaps the first time in my adult life, that her certainty, the absolute load-bearing certainty that had structured every conversation we had ever had about my choices, had developed a crack. Not a collapse, a crack. Which was, for my mother, significant. She called me the following Sunday, not Monday, not the next day while the evening was still raw. Sunday, which meant she had spent a week with it, turning it over, testing its edges. "I want to understand what you've built," she said when I answered. No preamble. Direct the way she was always direct. "I want to actually understand it, not to have you explain it in a way that makes me feel better. Actually understand it." I was quiet for a moment. "Okay," I said. "Can I come to your office?" I had a proper office now, a suite in a converted building in the Gulch, 3 staff members, a portfolio that included Aurelius and 4 other hospitality investments at various stages. Not a collection of enthusiasms, not a series of pivots, a firm. "Yes," I said, "Wednesday works." She came on Wednesday. She sat across from me at my desk and I walked her through it. Not the simplified version, not the version edited for emotional palatability, but the actual version. The 7 years. The early investments that were modest and deliberate. The partnership with Gerald. The methodology I had developed for identifying culinary talent that needed operational support. The growth of the portfolio. The numbers. She asked good questions. Sharp ones. My mother, whatever else she was, had a precise financial mind. It was where I had gotten mine, a fact I had never said aloud and chose not to say now. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I owe you an apology," she said. Not for the toast specifically, although yes, for the toast, but for the 10 years before it, for not asking, for deciding I already knew. She looked at her hands. "I was so certain you were lost. I never considered that you might be somewhere I hadn't thought to look." I had prepared, over the years, various responses to a version of this conversation. Responses that were measured or sharp or carefully generous. I had prepared for many emotional temperatures. I had not prepared for the particular feeling of simply being tired. Not angry, not vindicated, just tired of the distance, tired of the misunderstanding, tired of existing in my mother's imagination as something smaller than what I actually was. "I'm still here," I said. The same thing I always came back to. "So are you, let's start from here." She looked up, "I'd like that," she said. The family dynamics shifted in the way that real shifts do, gradually, unevenly, with backsliding and adjustment, and the occasional old habit reasserting itself before being caught and corrected. Brenny surprised me. 3 months after the dinner, she called and asked if we could have lunch. Just us, not family occasion, not performance. We ate at a small place near her house, and she told me, with the directness of someone who had decided to stop being comfortable in a role, that she had known for years that the comparisons were unfair and had benefited from them anyway and was sorry for that. I respected the honesty. We are closer now than we have been since childhood. My father, who had always expressed his pride in the private language of small gestures, a hand on the shoulder. An extra moment at the door when saying goodbye, started coming to my office occasionally on Friday afternoons, ostensibly to have coffee nearby. But actually I understood to see the place. To walk through the door and register, in whatever way fathers register these things, that his daughter had built something worth walking into. He never said much on these visits. He didn't need to. Marcus still runs his kitchen the way he always has, with the total focused intensity of someone who has been given the structural freedom to do the work he was built to do. We have breakfast occasionally, before service, at a small table near the window of the empty dining room. We talk about the next project, the next partnership, the state of the industry, the particular challenges of building something excellent and keeping it excellent over time. He asked me once whether I had known, when my mother made her toast, that the evening was going to unfold the way it did. "No," I said honestly. "I didn't know you were going to come out. I almost didn't," he said. "I saw the reservation. I knew who was in that room. I thought it's not my business." He paused. "But then I thought she has never once asked me to do anything for her. She has only ever worked. The least I can do is walk through a door." I looked at him across the small table. "Thank you," I said, "for walking through the door." He shrugged the way he always shrugged, economically, without ceremony. "You would have done it eventually anyway," he said. I just moved the timeline. He was probably right. Some truths find their moment regardless. But it matters sometimes who walks through the door first. Before you leave, if this story resonated with you, subscribe, hit like button, and share with others.